Have you ever said, "I'm not a math person," and then found yourself teaching math? That's where our journey begins, and what unfolded from there is a powerful story of the ways thinking classrooms impacted students and teachers. Welcome back to the first episode of Season 2, where we're diving into the transformative world of thinking classrooms in math with Raquel and Karina, two Northeast School Division educators who embraced this approach and reshaped their classrooms into thriving hubs of collaboration, curiosity, and confidence. From standing wipebook stations to spontaneous problem solving, their students are not just learning math, they're living it. Join us as we hear how vulnerability becomes strength, mistakes become stepping stones, and every student finds an entry point into learning. Whether you're a seasoned math educator or just curious about math, this episode will inspire you to rethink how learning happens in your classroom and how letting go as a teacher can lead to deeper engagement and unexpected growth. Listen in and discover how thinking classrooms are changing the game. One conversation, one question, one student at a time. Welcome to Northeast Voices, a podcast that spotlights the innovators and change makers in education. We're here to share the stories of inclusion, empowerment, and the impactful connections with the Northeast School Division and beyond, focusing on the pivotal role of students, families, and teachers. Join us as we dive into the conversations revealing the strategies and moments shaping the future of education. Any Voices is your platform for inspiration and connection, and is recorded in the Northeast School Division, sharing the land of Treaties 4, 5, 6, and homeland of the Métis in Northeast Saskatchewan. Be sure to subscribe and join our community of innovators and change makers. Let's get started. So today on Any Voices, we have Raquel and Karina, and we're talking about thinking classrooms in math. And they've both jumped into this topic head first this year and have tried it in their classrooms. They've invited parents to engage with it in many different ways. And so what we're going to talk about today is, what does that look like in the classroom? What grades do they teach? How does it ripple into other classes and other subjects? How does it impact the students, and how does it impact us as teachers, and how we choose to move forward? We are recording this in June, so we might need to pause and think about things for just a minute because it is June, but we all decided that it was probably better to capture our ideas before we forgot them over the summer. So welcome back. We're excited to have you back and listening to the podcast. And I'm going to turn it over to Raquel and Karina to introduce themselves and let us know what school they're at and what grades they teach. Take it away.
All right, my name is Raquel Scheidt, and I teach grade 3 at Tisdale Elementary School. I did a full grade 3 year this year with a 2-3 split the year before. So that was a lot of new learning for myself, but lots of enjoyable times. And I am looking forward to building some more building classrooms in the future.
And we're excited to have you here.
My name's Karina Calow. I teach at Reynolds School in Melfort. I guess my thinking classroom journey started just over the last sort of 2 years, I guess. I've always had a mix of grade 3 and 4, sometimes a straight, sometimes a split. Wrapping up a fabulous year with a 3-4 split this year and moving into a straight 3 for next year.
So it's really exciting to talk to the two of you because we've talked to Dan Milkey, and he was working on it, I think, in sort of a middle year science and then in a senior science. So it's really nice to see it and talk to you about what does it look like in an elementary classroom. And I think maybe just for some of our viewers and listeners that are new to what thinking classroom is. And the other thing I should add is that Karina and Raquel have been part of math lead teachers working with thinking classrooms over the past year. So their fantastic superintendent, Susan, and Rianne, who's also one of our coordinators of learning who leads the math work in thinking classrooms, had recommended the two of them to us to have a conversation. And so if we were to just give a little bit of background on thinking classrooms, could you summarize kind of what does thinking classroom look like in a grade 3, 4, 2, 3, 4 classroom?
We kind of jumped into it initially with Kyle Webb. He came and did some professional development with the math leads, which was very beneficial. So he kind of showed us what it would look like, and we explored as teachers, and it was very eye-opening on how we can change the learning and kind of how the classroom can be set up and how students can explore their thinking and show their thinking in a small group. And so when you walk into my classroom lately, you will notice that the students are standing up at a white book. They have a question along the top or some kind of a prompt, and they work through it with their group. They are talking. It's loud, but they are very engaged in what they're doing, and they build off of one another, which I think is extremely beneficial. We started with math, but it has definitely evolved into other curricular subject matter as well. And I've noticed that I can spontaneously just say, we're going to work this in right now. And the students are very excited. They build that collaborative kind of process with one another, and just those solving skills has really enhanced throughout the year.
Sounds fantastic. It sounds like a lot of fun to go into math class. Not that that's surprising, because math can be lots of fun. Karina, what does it look like in your classroom?
Very similar. I think for me, it certainly looks different if you were to walk in my classroom in the last year than perhaps if you would have walked in the last few years. Not to say that there wasn't learning happening specifically in math, but I think I'm just approaching it in a different way. And I think it's much, like Raquel said, the students are moving, students are up, students are talking. There's lots of discussion, there's lots of questioning. And I think for me, it really started, a little overwhelming at first, thinking I never regard myself as a math person. I have mentioned it before at our lead meetings that when I shared with my family at the supper table that I was going to be working as a math lead, they all sort of laughed and, you are like, that's Dad's area, right? And they kind of, it was an ongoing joke, but it's not so much an approach about being, math smart or being good at math. It's, I kind of reframe it as guiding the learning and encouraging thinking in a different way. And that, it's more about that and less about the right or the wrong behind whatever topic, specifically in math this year, but also similar to Raquel, just exploring in different subject areas too, with some of the practices. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. So it's not always about the right answer in math. And I know as teachers, we dig into those conversations talking about assessment and learning and, why do we teach the subjects that we do? And we often come back to it's the journey through and the thinking and the reflecting and the growing as a learner and being able to problem solve and do all of those different pieces. And I like how you said, I'm not a math person. I had to teach math a few times and I said the same thing. That was not one of my areas, but once I had the chance to dig in, it was a lot of fun. I wish I had known about thinking classrooms at the time. Both of you talked about kind of how it shifted in your classroom. So Raquel, do you want to explain just what a white book is for people that are maybe not sure yet?
Yeah, so a white book is just like a giant kind of whiteboard that we have on the wall around the classroom. The space is an issue, so it works the best if you can have it in on a stable wall and just keep it up all the time, which I have found enough spaces in my classroom, but some of the teachers in our school are struggling with where to put them. So if you have lots of windows and stuff, that's ideal, and the kids can stand and work away at it. So it's just a whiteboard, I guess, and they can use different dry erase markers. I have found that the students love the colored markers, and we use actually old socks as erasers. So they just put them on their hands and they'll use that as a little eraser. And that's kind of a fun little engaging part too. Each child kind of has a little job. So you're maybe writing or erasing or kind of speaking and sharing your answers. And then you have that recorder writing them down. So everyone's kind of standing, which I think is another benefit too, is they're out of their desk. They're moving around a little bit. When we were sharing about building thinking classrooms at one of our staff meetings, one of our teachers actually suggested or had said that the speech and language pathologist and OT said how beneficial white books can be, just standing and putting the pressure on the white books, and how important that can be for lots of younger students. So I have found that too. A few of my students that struggle with pencil and paper, they do really well with the white books, and that's just, it allows them to feel successful in their writing abilities. So that has been really good.
And no one's really ever alone. Like when I'm in a group, and I know when we went to the Thinking Classroom PD with Kyle Webb, and if you're wondering who Kyle Webb is, we do have some podcast episodes with Kyle where he goes through and talks a little bit about what to expect in a thinking classroom. But he gave us some fairly complex math problems to solve. And I know maybe some of us were feeling a little anxiety when we went up to solve them. And you're in a random group. So it's not, the teacher doesn't pick the groups. Kyle used cards to sort us into the groups. But you get there, and then you can connect with the other people and say, where do we start? And you could look around the room and take a look, because it's not cheating to look at what other people are doing or to get ideas or to ask your peers. And I like that you mentioned that everybody has a role. I don't just get to be the person who writes all the time and never says anything. Everybody rotates through. Space is definitely one of the things that we've heard come up as, how do I find that space in my classroom to use it so that you can spontaneously respond or go back to those in other classes? Karina, what does it look like in yours? Because I think you've come up with some creative solutions.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a process. And I think, well, the big piece there is not to let that sort of be the barrier. I think because in my classroom, our lockers are in here, and just the way my classroom is arranged with cupboards and things, there isn't a lot of wall space for that. So I did come up with a few, I've tried a few different things. Not necessarily ideal, but most recently, what I managed to dig through some storage areas in the building and repurpose some whiteboards that had been larger whiteboards that had been on carts and things like that weren't being used anymore, and just put some Velcro on the backs. And then I hang them up in front of the lockers. So I have 6 that just are at that level that work. Now, it is a little bit more, I have to put more thought into it. This is what we're going to do now. It's not as spontaneous in that regard. But all of my students also have their own small whiteboards that they keep at their tables. And that even is a great place to start, right? I mean, so a lot of the research and a lot of the teaching and modeling that Kyle Webb did with us was all of this standing. And Raquel mentioned what the OTs said and how beneficial that is. And it certainly is. But I think in, getting started with it, don't let, the fact that you don't have white books on your walls stop from getting into the process, because, there are ways to do it. There certainly are ways to do it. And it is as much about the questions and the collaboration and the learning with and from each other that, and the idea too that it's an erasable surface, right? So whether I'm using something that's on the wall or they're doing it on their individual whiteboards at their spots, the idea there is that they can erase, right? Nothing's permanent. So there's it does create a sense for the kids that a mistake is okay, right? They can just quickly wipe it. They can revisit it. They can change it as quick as they need to, things like that. So it's been a bit of a process to get the classroom environment set up that way. But I think, and that this year I worked with setting up those standing areas for working in collaboration. But certainly when I started with the thinking classroom process and just the collaboration piece with kids, we started it out as discussions, classroom discussions, and having math talks and things like that in our morning meeting routine. So they would come in and we would gather around the whiteboard or gather around the screen now, I guess, and have, a how many slide or which one doesn't belong. And so for me, that was the place to start to get the kids, used to thinking and asking questions and answering, and then seeing what other people say and seeing what their peers see in that same photo that they maybe don't, and things like that, and not worrying about writing things down. So, and then moving from there to the whiteboards and things like that. So
I agree with Karina. Like, I feel that we created kind of that community of learners first, and then went into more of the white books and the building thinking classroom, and we built that into our routine as well with the number talks, and just having students feel confident and comfortable sharing in the space was really important, and having that like rich vocabulary. Like I've seen the growth throughout the year of just how the students talk about math and their confidence to share an answer even if it's wrong, and just that whole process of how do we get to the answer or our idea end. And I think that whole process has been phenomenal to watch them and just see how much they have grown and built as learners and evolved into that thinking classroom. Like it definitely wasn't, okay, let's go stand up at the whiteboard and do this activity. It was quite a process or journey.
Yeah, yeah. And I really do think you know, even as I've wrapped up here with this group,
Yes.
I've brought up some slides that we had used, which one doesn't belong slides that we had used at the beginning of the
Yeah.
year. And I had recorded them working through the process. And I showed the video with them, the other day. And even they were giggling at some of their questions, like, oh, and they saw different things this time around that how come
Yeah.
I never noticed that? And I think the language and the ability to talk about their learning and to question each other in a way that is respectful and
Yes.
supportive, right? They're encouraging, and it's sort of a, well, I could help you in this way, or have you thought about it like this? And I think even at this, we're talking grade 2s and 3s and 4s here,
Mhm.
as teachers, we have to, with this thinking classroom process, we have to switch our way of looking at it and approaching it, but so do the students. And even at grade 2, 3, and 4, the first time I put up a how many slide, they just kind of looked at me and how many what? And you tell me. And it was sort of this panic, like, I can't do this unless you tell me what the answer you're looking for is, and then I'll find it, and so they're even at these younger early elementary years, you're still, needing to create, like you said, that community of learners and that idea of collaborating, right? That's the huge piece there, is that, we're learning with each other and from each other. And it has been really neat to see. Yeah, really neat.
We talked about like the kind of job or goal of the students, but we haven't really discussed like the teacher aspect. And I feel like that has been a huge change for me, is just allowing my students to learn on their own and kind of collaborate with each other, and me let go a little bit and just have them those like provide those opportunities for them to explore and take risks, and for myself just to stand back and let that happen, even though I know, okay, I need to get through this math curriculum and I need to do all these indicators. I have found this year that they are doing lots of the indicators when I don't even bring them.
Yeah.
Because they kind of just facilitate that on their own.
Mhm.
And that has been really amazing to see. And we finished our math early this year, which was extremely exciting.
Nice.
So we went back and did some review. And I just couldn't believe like the language that they were using, but they came up with lots of that on their own. And I just had to release a little bit of the leadership, I guess, and let them experiment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think too, that idea for us of letting go a little bit is huge. Yeah, last year when I started kind of exploring some of it, I had that sense of panic. Like, we'd get going on a math talk or a thinking task just to start with something simple, which one doesn't belong. And next thing you know, I'd look at the clock and half an hour had passed, and I'd think, oh no, like, I can't spend half an hour every day
Yep.
talking about these 4 pictures. But actually letting go of that this year, I was able to do more comfortably let go of that this year and allow for that time. And I think what ends up happening is you have these rich conversations with the kids, and you have the engagement where no matter where they're coming from with their understanding, maybe they're able to access it and they're able to bring something, whether their question or their response is number related, or maybe they're recognizing a color, or maybe they're something like that. There's an entry point for all of them. And just as Raquel mentioned, by the time we got into some of the other units that I had to get through, it was interesting to see some of the students pop up and say, hey, we did a lot of these type of questions during our morning meetings at the beginning of the year. And so without that direct instruction time, they had a base of understanding already from those thinking tasks that we had done. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. There's a lot of things that I have written down here that you've mentioned. You talked about taking the time to build the community, to create ways for them to talk with each other. You talked about how they were vulnerable in sharing mistakes. They've shifted that a mistake is something that's wrong as to this is where I'm at and how I'm learning. And this is how we learn. In fact, mistakes are how we learn all through life. We don't just walk in and get it perfect the first time. And so the questions are designed, or the thinking tasks are designed to get them digging deeper into that. But you talked about how they were being more vulnerable. You talked about the collaboration, the increase in the vocabulary that they were doing, how they were making connections between different things, which is all really, it's super exciting to listen to. Like, this is phenomenal. And these are two of you. So imagine this is happening in classrooms across the Northeast, across the world. A lot of thinking classroom work is happening.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of our Thinking Classroom in Math series with Karina and Raquel. As we wrap up part 1, here are a few of the things that resonated with us. It begins with community, a community of learners. Both Karina and Raquel shared how building trust and collaboration was foundational. Students learned to share ideas, embrace mistakes, and support one another in respectful, curious dialogue through consistent routines and practice. Sometimes you have to let it go to let it grow. Knowing when to step back as a teacher empowered students to become partners in their own learning. As Raquel shared, I couldn't believe the language they were using, but they came up with lots of that on their own, and I just had to release a little bit of leadership and let them experiment. Building Thinking Classrooms has accessible entry points for all learners. Whether through working with wipebooks or whiteboards or morning math talks, there was an opportunity for each student to find a way into the math conversation and to engage in their learning. As Karina reminded us, transformation begins with mindset, not just for students, but also for us as educators. She shared, I never regarded myself as a math person, but it's not about being math smart. It's about guiding the learning and encouraging thinking in a different way. Follow us over into part 2, where we continue to explore the power of vulnerability, curiosity, and the courage to rethink what teaching math can look like. Thanks for listening. Thank you for joining our community of innovators and change makers. We hope the conversations and stories have ignited a spark within. We'd like to express our gratitude to our dedicated Northeast educators. Until next time, remember to subscribe to Any Voices and join us on the next episode as we share the stories of learning shaping our future. Thanks for listening.